Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. You have your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, we have an amazing guest here with us. This is Dr. Saba. She is a keynote speaker, educator, self-discovery, and conscious parenting coach. So, Dr. Saba, tell us a little bit about what kind of fueled your mission or motivated you into what you currently do now.
Well, Lawrence, it's amazing to be here on this the Enlightened Misfit podcast. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Well, the journey is a roller coaster ride because, as you can see, the title doctor comes from me graduating as a dentist, right?
Oh,
So, as most yeah, as most of our parents decide our careers, it was so to me by my mother because she wanted me to be a doctor. I did work under a maxillofacial surgeon, but very soon I realized that I did not belong here. So I was quick to shift the gears, and then I started my preschool in the year 2011. That's how I became an educator.
okay.
So things were really fine, and as year on year we had 100 plus students graduating. So it was an amazing journey until 2019. But pandemic hit us, right? And
Right.
I can say that, pandemic was a blessing in disguise for me because this truly, it paved a path for me to awaken myself. So sitting back at home, doing nothing, and I was kind of haunted by this nothingness of my life because I was so engrossed in the energy of doing and doing and doing.
Yeah.
Sitting back at home, idle and doing nothing was kind of haunting. And this really started reflecting on my relationships. And the worst hit was with my son. So he being a very strong-headed boy, he really didn't take that nonsense from me, and he used to stand for himself. That's where I started looking into what parenting is all about. So started browsing net, started to get some knowledge about it because we are not given a manual, you see, about parenthood, about how to be a parent, what needs to be done. We are just pushed into it, and we just have to do everything intuitively, right? So
Right.
that's how I started my parenting journey. As we all know, universe has its own way to align things for us. It did the same to me. I was fortunate enough to stumble upon Dr. Shifali's Conscious Coaching Institute. All right. So I was quite reluctant to enroll myself as a coach because I didn't know how far it's going to serve the purpose for me. But I took the leap of faith. I entered into her institute. I did my course and I got certification as a conscious parenting coach. And now when I look back at it, I can say that it was the best decision of my life because this course transformed my life because it changed the entire perspective of life and relationships for me. Where I understood, to change what we see on the outside, we need to change who we are on the outside. That is, we really need to connect with our true, authentic self to have more deeper and meaningful relationships on the outside. So that's how this journey of conscious parenting and self discovery started for me. I really wanted to turn this message into a moment where I wanted to help parents to understand this is what it takes for you to be a parent. You really need to raise yourself to raise your children. So I started conducting a couple of master classes and things like that. And now I'm gradually moving towards helping women to embrace their authenticity so that they can live the life of their dreams, which they truly desire and deserve.
I would say I love that because I don't know how much you know about human design, but that's basically a little bit of where my journey was too, because I always wanted to be my authentic self, or I always felt like my authentic self people didn't like. right? So it's like I had to figure out why. Like, why was I liked by some people, by not? And I realized being a projector, you know, I had that very concentrated, I see people deeply. I understand them. I feel them like most empaths do, right? Intuitive, healers. Um, so it's fun. It's actually neat to hear. I was good. That was my next question when I said, so tell us your story about doctor, because it's when you said about being a dentist, I have to say I was not even expecting that to come out. I thought you were going to tell me that you worked in, Western medicine or something like that. So that's neat that, I hope like the listeners that are listening, they, just because you start one, from what I got from that, just because you start in one area of your life doesn't mean you can't pivot to be completely, obviously that's your title. You've worked hard for that, but it's like you do something completely different now. I mean, I'm sure those stepping stones have helped you with conscious parenting, but I love also what you said is we're just thrown into parenting. It's like it doesn't come with a rule book. We're just trying to learn for what our parents taught us, or what we're trying to express, help our kids express their emotions, or I do love human design also for conscious parenting too, because it helps me, especially for me with my daughter. It helps me, or helped me I should say, be able to realize that she's her own being. I need to help her trust herself, trust her intuition, trust how to make decisions. And then, I can't use what I do for myself, or I can't use what my mom and dad did for me to do that. Like it's just outdated. It's just, it just doesn't work anymore. So awesome. I love that. So tell us, when you say that you're kind of stepping into helping your clients step into their authentic selves. Is there a process that you do this? Do is there like a certain program that you are building? Tell us that what that looks like for you.
Oh, yes, Lauren. I am building my program. It's going to start off with a 5-day challenge where I help my clients to, change their story so that they can design their destiny. We come up with a lot of stories in our life which are not really true. And that's what authenticity is all about. We trade authenticity for attachment in our childhood, and we give up on our true self so that we are liked, we are adored by the society, by our parents, by our teachers. So a lot of things get lost in that process. And we start believing that this is who we are, which is not really true because we have been wearing a lot of different masks on ourselves, right? So it
Yeah,
is time for us to let go of those masks, to embrace that real you, which is, it's a process of rediscovering because it's not lost. It's just got deeply buried inside of you. And that comes up with a lot of stories because we've been told a lot of lies, like not good enough, not worthy of love, not worthy
right,
of belonging. So there are a lot of wounds that really get trapped inside of us. And it's high time that we start realizing that our habits, our behaviors, our thoughts are ingrained in these wounds. And that's how we start projecting our life, which is not true.
right.
So
Yeah,
yeah. So I take them through a 5-day challenge where they change their stories so that they realize that there is something that they can truly do and have control over their life. And then it's going to evolve into another program where we go much deeper into it, and we let go of the limiting beliefs. We let go of the patterns. We understand our triggers because it's very important for us to become conscious, become aware of our thoughts, our patterns, our behaviors, because that really drives our life.
right. Now, when you said strategies or like practices, have you found the most effective? Now I know for the ones that I use for my clients, it's that subconscious like reprogramming. Is this something that you also do? You do tapping, for the
Yeah.
subconscious mind? Is
Yes.
there something that you found more like effective? I should say, like staying true to yourself, like when you face challenges. Like if somebody's listening to this podcast, and then they have the question, what's coming to my mind is like what strategy or what practice could I find that's most effective staying true to myself, like when I'm actually like facing a challenge? What is like something that you could help them, or a strategy or
Yeah.
practice that you could help them have?
There are three key elements to embrace our authenticity, which I believe holds true. First is the consciousness. So being aware of ourselves, self-love, self-worth, and then relationships. So first is the consciousness, and then there is a key element of being mindful. You need to breathe, you need to know to pause, you need to know how to channel yourself to be in this present moment so that you don't get anxious about your past nor you get anxious about your future. So it's important to ground yourself in the present. And the third element for me is rewiring your brain, which is very, very important. That is reprogramming your subconscious mind. Because a lot of our habits and identity and everything gets deeply rooted in us during our childhood, where subconscious mind is predominant. So these are the three key elements, and also connection, which plays a huge role. You really need to connect with your own self so that you develop self love. When you develop self love, it's only then you're able to give that love to others. You
Right,
cannot really fill others' cup when you're running empty on inside, right?
right.
So it's
Yes.
about connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is
So I,
this is the framework that I use to help people to embrace authenticity.
awesome. So the one thing that had, and I feel like it's coming up a lot of like with my clients in the collective, when I hear somebody says that, if they're in a relationship or they can't find this person, or they want a partner. My first question is, have you loved yourself enough? So like how do you treat yourself? Like what is your relationship to yourself? And like you just reiterated that again, that how can you give your if you are so for me, what's true for me and my belief is I realized that I was attracting all of these lessons that I needed to learn, right? So it's like I was attracting these men that would use me. I was attracting these men that would abuse me. And I'm not saying that your abuse or your trauma is your fault, but understanding that awareness and having that, your healing is your fault. It's nobody else's responsibility, right? So I
Yes.
realized, what if I just told myself, what if I just stopped attracting those people? What if I just gave all of the energy that I was giving out to everybody else and like gave it to myself? Because I often see even on these mom groups on social media or Facebook, it's like, my husband doesn't love me, my boyfriend doesn't, it's like all this stuff. And it's just like my best advice is give all of that love back to yourself. Because once you do that and stop giving it out, it's where my shift happened. I realized, holy crap, this really works. People all over the internet are just not telling us to do this, and it doesn't really work. So I love that you said that too, because that is true for me, and I think it's true for a lot of people that want to have that awareness, because right, we're not born with awareness. We have to want to wake up to that awareness. So I love that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question I have is, so you mentioned something about the perfectionism, and correct me if I'm wrong. Is it perfectionism debunked? Can you kind of explain a little bit about what that means, or like if it's a process that you use, like what is it something that you can overcome perfectionism? So tell us what that
Yeah.
kind of looks like.
It's all about understanding that there is nothing perfect in life, because this is a coping mechanism, a strategy that we pick up in our childhood, right? And
Yeah,
it plays a huge role as we grow into adults. And just because to be perfect, we start self sabotaging ourselves. The feeling is so overwhelming if you're not able to do a particular thing in a particular way. you feel it's better, you don't even give an attempt to it. You
Right.
want to just let go of it, right? Because this has been my case for good 2.5 years now. It's only after getting into consciousness, understanding these things, have I realized how perfectionism is playing in my life. Even to this day, I feel that there is so much more that I need to know. It's never enough, you see. You always want to make sure that everything on the other end is so perfect and, like, up to the mark, where you constantly keep questioning yourself. Is this enough? Will I be able to bring results to my client? What knowledge I have, what wisdom I have, will that be enough to serve them or to help them shift? So that hunger never really settles. So it's important for us to realize to what extent is it serving in our life, and move ahead when it is not serving, because you start self-sabotaging yourself. So it's a myth that perfectionism is something that, like, you really need to have in your life, because the entire childhood you've been compared, you've been told to be perfect, you've been told to achieve good grades, look a certain way, talk a certain way. So we develop this as a coping mechanism, and as adults it doesn't really serve us, and we need to let go if we really have to evolve and grow.
Yeah. So when you said perfectionism, would you agree, or do you agree to some level that like perfectionism could be because like evolving into your authentic self could heal perfectionism, or it could give you, well, this isn't perfect but I feel like this is my best I can give, or if you just truly know that this is all you can give, do you feel like you could heal perfectionism? Because I often see a lot of people say, if you want to do this to heal perfectionism, you got to do this. And it's just like, for me, I just feel like it's not that very direct. I feel like when I'm working with clients and whatever their experience is, like we all have childhood trauma. If it's a breakup, if it's, our parents didn't teach us about our emotions, if it's like, abuse, if it's whatever it is, but I feel like just different experiences, because I often hear a lot of people in the older generation, they're like, my childhood was perfect. I didn't have any trauma. I didn't have this, but they're coming to me with self-esteem issues, or I don't feel like I'm doing enough. When you have a client come to you and say that, wouldn't you notice that there is some type of childhood trauma? Or maybe it is perfectionism. Maybe like their parents made them be a certain way. Would you agree to that, or do you feel like you have a different perspective on that?
I recently had a client who is a teenager, and she was she's just a teenager, and it so happened that she had so much of trauma. She had stopped attempting her exams. She completely stopped going to her exams for the fear of a failure.
Mm,
Okay. She
yeah.
wanted to be perfect in anything and in everything that she delivers. She wanted her grades to be perfect. She wanted her preparation to be perfect. The moment she felt that she is not up to the mark, she's not able to keep up her parents' expectations, she started self-sabotaging her, and she didn't wanted to go to exams, and she retreated back. She sat at home without going to exam for the fear of failure.
Mm,
So when you
yeah.
are so focused towards being perfect, you don't feel motivated to take any kind of action towards it. The fear always lingers inside of you for letting down your parents' expectations, for letting down yourself and not being able to keep up to the standards that the school has to offer, or the way your peers, work in the classroom, the way they achieve, the way you achieve. So there's a lot of comparison that starts inside of yourself. And whatever little bit that you could do, you are not in a state to deliver that, and you hinder yourself. So I really had to work a lot on her and help her understand you're much beyond that. So when
Right.
you start accepting yourself for who you truly are, you let go of these beliefs,
Yes.
because you are more than that. when we embrace our authenticity, we also come from a place of abundance. We let go of the lack. Yes, of course, it's not something that happens matter of a fortnight or in a month time. It's a continuous process. It's a journey in itself, right? Because we need to work day in, day out on these things, on our patterns and everything, because sometimes it goes unnoticed. It is so deeply rooted inside of yourself, you won't realize it, that this is what is happening with you. It is something that's stopping you from, like, doing what needs to be done. So I always tell her, I started telling her, notice what is important, what is what needs to be done in this moment, letting go of what has happened in the past. So doing what is right and not what is easy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that came to me when you had said that it's a journey in itself, I can definitely resonate with that with for myself, with my clients, just anybody that, I've helped along the way of my own journey, because I often had that same belief that, and when you had said perfectionism, because I felt like I am like a, healing or healed perfectionism, like perfectionism. That's not even a word, I don't think, right? And then, also because I didn't even realize, like when you said that you have to have that understanding, I personally did not even realize that my parents, or maybe my parents, didn't even realize that they are holding me at these expectations that, when I was a 2-year old, 3-year old, 4-year old, I wasn't allowed to cry in public, or I wasn't allowed to, cry, or if I cried, I had to go to my room. And it's like, just over time, I don't even think they realized that all they were doing was making me deal with these big emotions that, for one, I didn't even know what they were, to deal with them alone. So I feel like a huge, and I'm very authentic and I can speak about this, but I feel like a huge, even my generation, I think like the 80s and 90s babies have this huge wound of abandonment, because it seems like every single parent, that's what they learned from their family, because they were abandoned or they were
Yeah.
physically abandoned by their parents. And I feel like, as a collective, I feel like a lot of people that I talk to around my age have this same thing. And I often, like a couple years ago, I thought, like, why is that? Like, why, we all came from different households, why do we all have the same wound? And it's because collectively we were supposed to heal it, like we're supposed to heal it together. And I didn't realize, like, my parents were very good parents, so it was never like, you know I when this was coming up during my own healing, I didn't realize that, wow, I did deal with huge emotions alone: anger, frustration, sadness. And it's like, I didn't know what that meant. Like, it was just like, go to your room. It's like, I wanted to express myself. Like, I don't feel safe, or, and it was just like, I had to then just make myself feel safe. And, sometimes that does come up too. Like, it's like you said, it's a journey in itself, because for me, yes, it has been.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Our parents did the best that they could with the knowledge
Yes,
they had.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's important to, like, release them of that
Yeah.
guilt. Because when I started with this conscious parenting journey, I had a huge emotional breakdown. I was like, how could they do this to me?
Yes.
Why did they have to force me to do something which I was not interested in? Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so a lot of blame game starts there. Oh,
Yes.
I have these patterns in me because this happened to me in my
Yeah.
childhood. So it becomes very important for us to realize that's what consciousness is all about. It's
Yes.
that you need to let go, because they were on that level of consciousness, and that's the best thing that they could do in that moment. That is all they knew about, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you really need to let go, and only then will you be able to understand the emotional baggage that you carry inside of yourself, so that you don't project that onto your children. You become conscious, you become aware of these patterns, and you see how best as a parent you can withhold of those patterns, so that your kids are less traumatized. Of course,
Yes.
there is
Yes.
some amount of trauma that every one of us go through, no matter how consciously you parent, because not every moment is going to be the same. You do scream at them, you do shout at them, but it is about repairing those ruptures. As
Right.
humans,
Yes.
we all lose our mind. I mean, like it's a very normal process to get frustrated, to get irritated. You
Yeah.
really can't hold back yourself. But when that happens, what do you do after that? Or
Right.
when you are in that moment, do you have the awareness to pause and step back?
Yes. Yeah. I love that you said that too, because, as I had to reparent myself, I also had the chance and I had the opportunity to now learn what I've learned and actually teach it to my daughter because she's a toddler. She's going to be 4 in December or the end of December, 2 days before Christmas. And I realized when, through my journey and had left when I left her father, to break this curse of trauma and abuse and all this. I'm not doing this. I'm gonna heal myself, so I could be there for my daughter was my why for a long time. And I realized that she actually helps me stay in the moment because I've just from my past experiences and my past trauma and abuse, I it's very hard, it's very easy for me, and I think even still sometimes now when I get triggered, to take myself out of my body. So, like, just because I don't want to feel it, right? So, I feel my daughter has helped me like dramatically this last year to when I tell her something like, hey, we're going to go here. And for whatever reason, I have to tell her a day ahead of time. I don't know why, but I just have, and she always says, right now, mommy, right now. So it's like, I have to remember, oh, that's right. She's almost a 4-year-old. She doesn't care about tomorrow. She doesn't even
Yes,
know what tomorrow
yes,
is, right? She doesn't know what
yes,
time is.
yes.
So it actually just keeps me actually in the moment. And I feel like that's the
Mm,
best
mm,
part
mm.
because now that I live for the most part in the moment, in my daily life, I feel like I don't miss things like signs from the universe. I don't miss those moments that, she's playing and I can be there or like that type of stuff. Those moments that I feel like are the ones that matter the most, especially because I get to stay home with her, like working from home, like having my business. And you know, granted, I had to cut out a lot in my life to do that, like most of us entrepreneurs do, right? So it's like,
Right.
but I feel like if I can be there, my child's only going to be young for 7 years and then she's going to grow up.
Mm.
So it's like, if I can be home and be with her as much as I can, obviously, she'll grow up to a teenager and all that, so I'll still be there. But the one thing I always wanted her to remember is my mom was always there, right? Because I feel like that is what she's going to carry with her the rest of her life. And if I feel like, I started when you said about the blame cycle, I started there too. And then I realized I
Mhm.
needed to understand that no, that's just my victim programming, like that victim mentality, poor me, pity me, all this stuff. That's an ego response. And then I got to the point that I was trying to like protect her from trauma. And then I realized, oh, I'm doing nothing but making it worse for her. And I was like, okay, so like
Right.
I had to be in the middle. So yeah, I love that you are doing this because I feel like a lot of parents are struggling. Like they're parenting themselves, they're trying to parent kids, they're trying to, have a job. So I love that that you're doing this. So, with that being said, is there anything else that you wanted to tell the listeners? Is there a way that they can get a hold of you if this is something that they want to work with you? Also, you're a keynote speaker. If somebody's listening to this podcast and wants to have you speak at like a school, or I have a lot of people in my network that are, they have these movements around kids and parenting.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
how would they get a hold of you if they want to have you speak or if somebody wants to coach with you?
Oh, well, they can get in touch with me through Facebook, through my Facebook profile. They can send me a direct DM because I conduct a lot of workshops to the educators because I speak a lot about brain development. It's very important for educators to understand how really brain works and what is it that we really need to do, especially when we are dealing with early childhood education, when we are dealing with toddlers, say from 0 to 6 years of age, which is the most crucial period. So I feel educators really need to know the brain development and how it really works so that, in whatever little way uh, we can like, help these kids to be more conscious to feel worthy of themselves, to instill a sense of confidence in them, sense of worthiness in them, because that's where everything roots, right? So I do
Right.
conduct a lot of workshops to educators, a lot of master classes to parents as well. So I would be very happy if an opportunity is given to come and share my wisdom and knowledge.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I'll make sure that your links are also in the description box so people can check them out.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I know I enjoyed this as me being a parent, and I know a lot of you guys listening also are parents. So hopefully, you had take some wisdom. I can tell, and I know just by talking to her that she has so much wisdom. So if you liked this episode, just don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with somebody that you feel that will gain value from listening to this. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you next time.